I think we're on. How's everybody doing today?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, good, thank you. Okay, so let me just pull up the page so that I can make sure that everything's working. Just to confirm, give me just a minute. Okay, perfect, and we're on. So we're here. Sorry, I'm just getting back from break, so trying to get into this. So we thank you for joining me. So we are doing this live session so that we can share information about COVID-19 and particularly how it affects immigrants, what the immigration courts are doing. So here with us today we have Kate, who is the owner and main attorney here. Kate, can you say hi?
Hi.
Yeah, so she graduated in 2008 from the law school here at the University of Texas at Austin. She's been practicing immigration law ever since. We also have with us Cori Hash. Cori, hi.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon.
She also graduated from the law school here at the University of Texas in 2004 and has also been practicing since then. So we have a lot of years of experience here. And lastly, we have with us Krystal. Hi, Krystal.
Hi, everyone.
She graduated from St. Mary's, the school over there, the law school, in 2010, and has been practicing since as well. So we're here to talk mostly, like I said, about COVID-19, how it impacts mostly our cases and immigration. So Krystal will be talking to us about just the shelter-in-place rules here in Austin and Waco and just generally in Texas. Also talking to us about some of the rights that people have to keep in mind as they're going outside if they are. Cori's going to give us an update about immigration, what USCIS is doing, what the courts are doing, how we can still move the cases along. And then lastly, Kate is going to go a little bit more in detail about the CARES Act. She's going to talk about the relief checks that some people may have gotten already, who qualifies for those, who doesn't. Something about immigrants and how it affects them, and just also about unemployment and just the aspects of that act that came out. So she's going to break it down for us. Just a reminder, we're still open, Lincoln-Goldfinch Law. As you can see, we're all working from home. I'm here in my bedroom in my apartment. So we're still working, we're still moving the cases along. Our office is only available for drop-offs in case y'all need them, but we have instructions about how to do those safely so that you can still move your case along. So we're still working, getting through this time. And Krystal, if you want to get us started, I think we're ready.
Great, thank you, Val. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different stay-at-home orders, Austin, Waco, and kind of Texas's orders generally. So in Austin, we just had an extension a couple of days ago, and they've extended the stay-at-home work safe order until May 8th, and they've added some new restrictions. A lot of it is mostly the same as what we've been dealing with. Everybody's ordered to stay at home at their place of residence, practice social distancing, and not really leave your house unless it's for essential activities or essential services. Essential services and essential activities, that's for like the health and safety of the people who live in your home, including pets, to go and pick up necessary supplies or to deliver those necessary supplies to others. And this includes things like groceries or essential work from home supplies. You can also go outside of your house for exercise, outdoor activity like walking or hiking or running or biking. But you do have to practice social distancing when doing these activities. Stay at least 6 feet away from everybody else. You can also leave your house to take care of others. If there's somebody who doesn't live in your home but is dependent on your care, an elderly parent or grandparent, or your child lives with someone else for part of the time, you are allowed to leave your house to care for that family member or care for your neighbor who's dependent on you. You can also go to obtain services from an essential business or to keep your own essential business running. So you can do minimum basic operations, things like going in, processing payroll, or going to the post office to mail things out. We have, so some of the essential businesses, as outlined by the order, everything that has to do with healthcare, and stores that sell groceries and other supplies like office supply stores, farming, livestock, fishing businesses, anything that keeps the supply chain moving, social services and charities that provide food and shelter, news media, gas stations, banks, home improvement stores, any critical trades, plumbers, electricians. Now the order specifically says that including these critical trades as essential businesses is not the same thing as giving everyone free range to have non-essential maintenance or repair. So this isn't the time for discretionary improvements to your home. Mail and delivery, and schools are allowed to pass out food or do home learning packets, anything to further at-home learning. Restaurants are open for to-go food, and food delivery companies, and supplies that are essential to business. We've talked about that a little. Essential government services are open, and critical infrastructure. If you do leave the house for one of these reasons, you're expected to maintain social distance, which is a distance of at least 6 feet from anyone other than the people who live in your house with you. The order says that parents of kids who are under 10 years old are responsible for maintaining social distance between your kid and someone else. There are a few, so it also very specifically prohibits gatherings, either indoor or outdoor, between different households. So there are no play dates, no dinners with friends right now at this time. The order also maintains that non-essential travel is prohibited. So unless you're traveling for one of the above reasons, or you're coming back into Austin or leaving Austin to get to your home, other than that, they don't want you out and about. One of the newer requirements in the order is the requirement to keep your face covered. So we've got this new mask requirement, mostly because we now know that coronavirus can be transmitted before a person shows symptoms. So it requires everyone who's over the age of 10 to cover their mouth and nose with a face covering of some sort when they leave the house. There are some exceptions to this. If you are alone in a single separate space, indoor or outdoor, you don't have to. For example, I'm out on my porch right now, it's okay. When you're only in the presence of members of your household, in or out of the home. So even if you take a walk, it's just you and your household, as long as you can keep 6 feet of distance from someone else. When wearing a face covering, if it poses a greater risk to your mental or physical health or safety than not wearing it, then you're exempted. And if you're engaged in outdoor activities such as running or biking, and it's prohibiting your intake of air, and if you're eating or drinking. So it's important to note that wearing a face mask doesn't mean that you shouldn't or you don't have to practice social distancing. The city still expects you to maintain 6 feet away. One of the other new requirements is that you have to let emergency services know or your health provider know if you have tested positive or anybody in your house has tested positive, or if you're waiting on results, or if you have a cough and fever. The order itself, it carries a $1,000 fine, and it's also a criminal offense, so you could face up to 6 months in jail for it. But for right now, we're mostly reliant on the honor system. Everyone's supposed to be regulating each other, regulating ourselves. It does leave the door open for increased enforcement if people aren't honoring the order, not using face masks and not maintaining social distance. In Waco, the order is much the same as it was before. It goes only until May 1st. So unlike Austin, which extended to May 8th, Waco's ends on April 30th. So I guess the end of the day on April 30th, so May 1st. It does not require masks it does ask people to maintain social distance and to stay home whenever possible, unless it's an essential activity. Construction specifically, so the first iteration of Austin's stay-at-home order said that non-essential construction was not an essential business, but the governor issued his own order that goes until April 30th for the state of Texas, and it specifically said that all construction is essential business. Austin's order does have additional requirements. If you run a construction site, you need to have hand washing stations available. You have to stagger shifts, so no more than 10 people are on a site at once, things like that. Let's see, the governor's order also mandated that schools would remain closed until May 4th. We do in Austin, obviously it's a tough time. People not being able to work and businesses being closed means people are facing financial hardships. And Austin City Council has, they've funded a $15 million fund that's going to provide cash assistance to Austin residents who are facing these kinds of financial difficulties. It's prioritizing folks who can't access the stimulus money, people who are undocumented, don't have work authorization. And it should help with things like housing, rental assistance, food. It's going to be funneled through nonprofits, but we don't have a whole lot of information yet on how you can access that money. Everything's kind of happening. We're hearing, even today, there was more information about how this fund will work. So if this is something that you need more information about, feel free to shoot us a message and we'll try to answer it as best we can. You can also call 311 and they should also have more information. I also wanted to talk a little bit about your rights. Both if you're out and about and you get stopped by a police officer who wants to know why, or if you're violating the stay-at-home order. One of the things we've been doing as a firm is if you have to be out for work purposes. So we have a letter that says we're an essential business. This is the type of activity that we're doing that's essential for the business, mailing things out, processing payroll, going to the office for copies. And that's something that everyone's been carrying with them if they have to leave the house for work purposes. That way, if we are stopped, we can show it to a police officer and prove that, have some kind of supporting documentation that we're out there for essential reasons. We're happy to share that if it's something that you think you might need for your business or for you as an employee. Please feel free to message us and let us know. In Waco, they've said specifically that it's not necessary, but you should have an explanation ready as to why you're out of the house. And I also wanted to speak about ICE enforcement a little. So ICE, once the beginning of the pandemic started, ICE said we're going to stop all of our enforcement activities unless we're enforcing something for public safety. So they're not going to be doing as many arrests or detentions unless that person poses a big public safety risk. However, we know everybody's in their homes and it is a concern. And so for those of you that might be concerned, just know that if ICE does show up at your door, it doesn't mean that you don't have any rights or that there's nothing you can do. Just be calm and keep your door closed. Ask through the door for them to identify themselves. Ask if they're immigration agents and what they're doing there. Ask that they show you their badge, either through the peephole or through the window. And if they tell you they're there for someone specifically, you can say, well, do you have an order of arrest or an order that's signed by a judge? And if they say no, that they don't have the right to enter your home. So you can say, well, I refuse you entry. I'm not going to open the door. And they'll have to come back with a warrant if that's something that they can get, a signed warrant by a judge. If they do have that, if it has been signed by a judge, you do have to let them enter. But it doesn't mean that you have to give them any information. You can remain silent. You can still ask for your lawyer. One won't be provided to you free, but if you have a lawyer already, you have the right to put yourself in contact with them. So again, don't open the door, ask for a signed warrant by a judge. Those orders of prior deportation orders don't usually have a judge's signature on them. So they don't grant ICE entry into your home. And I think that's pretty much it for me. I'm going to turn it over to Cori, who can talk more about what USCIS and AOIR are doing.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. As Krystal mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about what is going on in the world of immigration and specifically how everything with the coronavirus is affecting immigration cases and some of the frequent questions that we're getting from our clients and our potential clients in hopes that it's useful information for you as well. So one of the big questions we're getting is from people who are thinking about applying for citizenship or thinking about applying for permanent residence. And they want to know, can I file an application right now? Is Immigration Services accepting those applications? And the answer is yes, they absolutely are. We are filing, and Immigration Services is accepting applications for citizenship, for permanent residence, for DACA, for asylum, for work permits and everything. They're accepting all applications at this time. And as far as we know, they're continuing to receive those, to send receipts out, to process them. They are processing cases generally as they were before, as long as they're practicing it safely. They have made a few efforts to kind of help cases that would be filing now with the circumstances that we're in. So they know, for example, in the past when we would prepare an application, we would have to have you come into the office and sign the paper, and we would send those original signatures in. Immigration has come out and said, look, we don't need your original signature. A copy is just fine. So this allows us to work with you remotely, send you by email or text messages, copies of your applications, to have you email those back to us, and we can just send those copies into immigration. And that way everyone is safer in processing those cases. Likewise, immigration is able to use, so in most immigration cases like citizenship or permanent residence, when you're asking for the green card, one of the steps in that process is to go to an immigration office and have your fingerprints taken. They're not able to do those appointments anymore. They are closing those offices to the public. And so when they can, the Immigration Services is going in and using fingerprints that may be from an old case or an old application, and just using those fingerprints again so that you don't have to come in and put yourself at risk, and their employees are not put at risk either. So that's some great news coming from the agency. Another piece of information that they've given us is that if you filed your case, or you will be filing it soon, and they write to you and the Immigration Services says, we need more information, or we need this extra document from you that you didn't send in the first place, or we need something different, they normally give you a deadline to send that in. Well, they're extending those deadlines. The standard extension is going to be 60 days because they know there are delays in being able to get out and get, whether you need photographs or copies, that it can be harder to get that right now, and it may not be safe for you to do that right now. So they're granting those extensions for us. For people who may have already filed an application with the Immigration Services, your question may be, what's going to happen to that case? Where's my case going? What's happening? Is it just coming to a complete stop? Well, the good news, again, is that it's not. Most of those cases are continuing forward. They're processing them normally. Some people may encounter delays that are related to in-person interviews and appointments, but other cases are proceeding as normal. So USCIS, as I mentioned, is processing those cases. They're trying to complete applications when they can. Immigration Services is closed to the public, so they're not offering those fingerprint appointments. They're not able to have in-person interviews at their offices for asylum, permanent residence, or citizenship, and they're not holding citizenship ceremonies right now. So anyone who had one of those appointments scheduled in the past, it has been canceled, and it will be rescheduled automatically once USCIS reopens to the public. Right now, that date for reopening is scheduled for after May 3rd, or for May 3rd and after, but it could be extended once again, and we will be receiving updates and information about that. You should be receiving notices or emails coming in, or text messages if you have a USCIS account that's letting you know that those have been canceled and will be rescheduled. If you haven't, don't worry. It will be rescheduled once the agency reopens again after May 3rd, or whenever it's safe to reopen again. The same is true for citizenship ceremonies. If you didn't get a notice or a phone call that your citizenship ceremony was canceled, don't worry. As soon as they're open, the agency's open again, they will be working to schedule those ceremonies, and we'll reach out to you to schedule that again. For those of you who are in process and who may not be there yet there in your case, know that there may be a bit of delay while you're waiting for your interview or your ceremony, and we will have to wait till the agency reopens for those to be scheduled for the first time. But like I said, those are just a few types of applications that the Immigration Services, USCIS, is processing. There are many other applications that they process that don't require any in-person contact. And those applications are proceeding as normal. In some cases, we actually are finding that they're processing those cases more quickly. I gave an example to someone earlier today that we had a case that is a type that normally would take 2 to 3 years, and we received a response in about 6 months. So in some cases, we're finding that those answers, those responses are coming more quickly, likely because those employees of the agency, they're not doing interviews, they're not doing appointments, so they have time to focus on the cases that don't need them. And in some cases, they may be able to waive interviews if they're not required by law. All right. Another question that we've gotten from people is, I came to the US as a visitor or on another temporary visa, and I'm not able to return home because of the coronavirus situation. What can I do if my visa is about to expire or it's already expired? So please know that you can apply to extend your visa stay. There's an application and form that you can send in to Immigration Services to ask them to extend it, to allow you to wait and be able to travel and return to your home country when it's safe to do so. We do recommend that those of you who would like to request an extension of your visa try to gather evidence that your flight was canceled or that all the flights going into your home country were canceled. Or if you have a medical condition that makes it not safe to travel by air, to include any information about that, because that will help your case get approved. It is recommended to file that before your visa or your stay expires. But if you can't, for whatever reason, you can file after your visa is expired and provide an explanation about why you didn't do so beforehand. Perhaps you were ill or a family member was ill and you needed to care for them. They are going to grant exceptions to filing before your visa expired. So this is generally for people who have tourist visas that I talked about, but if you're here on a student visa or a work visa, or other types of temporary visas, know that, and you can't return home in time because of everything that's happening, know that you may be able to seek an extension with Immigration Services as well. And please reach out to our firm, give us a call or send us a message here or on Facebook, and find out what your options may be to seek an extension of your status. If you came to the US on a visa waiver or the ESTA program, you too can seek an extension if you're not able to return home at this time. For those of you who are looking to apply, who are outside the US and are hoping that maybe you can apply for a visa to come and work or study or visit the US, unfortunately right now that may not be possible. The US embassies and consulates are closed to the public, and they're not processing visas at this time and are only providing emergency services to US citizens and permanent residents. If there's an urgent situation, an urgent need to travel to the United States, you can reach out to the US Embassy or Consulate to see if they will make an exception on an emergency basis. But otherwise, we'll have to wait until those US embassies and consulates are reopened to the public once again.
We have a question.
Yes.
Do we have any information for people who are waiting for a State Department scheduled interview? I'm guessing the consular process.
Yes, I was just about to talk about this.
Great.
So we do have lots of individuals who are applying for permanent residence through the U.S. consulate or embassy in their home country, and at the end of that process are going to be scheduled for an interview. So those who were scheduled for interviews beforehand, those interviews were canceled, and we will be helping our clients to reschedule those as soon as the consulates are reopened. Those of you who are waiting to be scheduled for an interview will have to wait some additional time until the consulates are reopened, and then they should start moving forward and scheduling those interviews once again. But in the meantime, your case is still active, it's still open, and so you'll continue to wait a little bit longer for that visa interview, but not to where your case is still safe. Okay. And also related to that, those of you who are just starting the process to apply for permanent residence through the U.S. consulate, we're still able to do all of that. We're able to file those applications, get those cases started. We will just have to wait for the interview a little bit longer than we expected due to the situation. And we'll provide as much information about changes to that process going forward as we get it.
And there's somebody else that wants to know if USCIS is currently processing applications for removal of condition on permanent residency.
Yes, absolutely. And we are seeing that in a lot of those cases, both in our own cases and what we're hearing from other attorneys, is they're doing those cases more quickly than they have been in the past, because they were taking a long time previously to process those. And we are seeing that they're waiving interviews in some of those cases that in the past they might have scheduled for an interview. So absolutely, those are going forward, and hopefully those are going to get faster under the current circumstances and afterwards too. All right. Also, just a quick comment about anyone who may have a green card, permanent residence, and maybe outside the U.S. right now. Just a reminder that as a permanent resident, we do recommend that you don't stay outside of the United States any longer than 6 months during any one trip. If you are in that circumstance that you're outside the US and you think you might be coming close to 6 months outside the US, or you've already passed that 6-month time, we do recommend that you contact the US Embassy or consulate in the country where you are to seek some assistance to get back into the United States, because they are allowing permanent residents and citizens to return back to the United States. It just might be a question of whether any flights are available, but the US embassies and consulates are assisting with that and trying to get people home on flights. You can register for the STEP program, which is providing updates on any available flights back to the United States. And then for those of you who passed the 6 months outside of the US or who might be getting there soon, we do recommend that you keep proof of all your attempts to contact the embassy and the consulate, of your canceled flights, of your attempts to book new flights, so that when you come back in, you can show, I didn't intend to abandon my residence. This situation just changed everything and I couldn't get back. And we do believe immigration will be accepting of those circumstances, and will make some exceptions. All right. I'm going to turn now to talking about the immigration courts and what's going on with them. Like their sister agency, the Immigration Services, the immigration courts are still open, but they are closed to the public for the most part. All hearings for people who are not detained or who are not in ICE custody have been canceled through May 1st. And those will be rescheduled in the future. If you're someone who had an immigration court hearing anytime between mid-March and May 1st, you may not have received a new letter in the mail, or even if you have one between now and May 1st and you're not sure, just know that it will be canceled and it will be rescheduled. You just may not get a letter. You may not get a letter in the mail before your hearing telling you that. If you have any concerns and you're a client of ours, reach out to us and we can confirm your hearing date. We'll be in touch with you if we find out it is being canceled and rescheduled. And we also want to let everyone know that you can call the immigration court hotline anytime and find out information about your case, including your next scheduled hearing date. And that phone number, if I have it correct, but if not, we can post it on the Facebook page, is 1-800-898-7180. And you can find the updated hearing date. We do know that the court here in San Antonio, which covers Waco, Austin, San Antonio, and all the surrounding areas, has canceled the hearings all the way through May 1st so far, and may likely be rescheduling hearings even past that date for non-detained persons. People who may have hearings before under the Migrant Protection Protocols or Remain in Mexico program, Those hearings have also been canceled by the immigration court and will be rescheduled for after May 1st. Individuals who are in the Migrant Protection Protocol program do still have to appear at the border in Nuevo Laredo, in Matamoros, or in Tijuana the date of the scheduled hearing to get a new hearing date notice so they can return for that hearing in the future. We have been hearing and expecting that those hearings will start up again in May. But again, we'll keep everyone updated about any changes to those hearing dates in the court schedule as soon as we learn anything. Outside of the hearings, the immigration court staff is still working. They're still accepting filings. They're still processing cases. The judges are still there in the courthouses. And they are still holding hearings for people who are detained right now. So detained hearings are still proceeding by telephone or video. And this is because we don't want to have individuals who are detained staying in detention any longer than they need to. So the court is still prioritizing those and holding those hearings. So that brings us to the next issue, which is what happens if you or a loved one is detained by ICE? What, if anything, has changed there? And one thing to know is that generally all your rights are the same now as they were a month or 2 months ago if you were detained by ICE. You still have the same rights, as Krystal mentioned beforehand, to refuse to let ICE enter your home or your workplace if they don't have a warrant signed by a judge. You have the right to refuse to provide information and to stay silent when speaking with the ICE agents. You have a right to speak to someone from the consulate of your home country, a representative of the consulate, to get information and to get assistance. So please do, if you would like, reach out to someone from your consulate. If you are from Mexico, the Mexican consulate is doing video visits, I understand, and is reaching out to detained individuals in this area and can help communicate with you or with your loved ones who are detained. If you are detained, you have the right to have an ICE agent do a custody or bond decision to decide if you're eligible for bond and to give you a bond so that you could be released by paying a certain amount of money. And then if you're not able to pay that amount or you don't like the decision of the ICE agent, to seek review of that decision from an immigration judge. So if the ICE agent said, we're not going to let you have any bond, you can ask the judge to look at that and see if that was the right decision. And that is a type of case that we can help with. If you have any questions about that process, or you want any more information, or you need representation for yourself or a loved one, please reach out to our office and we can talk to you more about that process and how we can help. Just know that if you're detained by ICE, it doesn't mean that you're going to be deported or removed. If this is your first contact with immigration, it's more likely that you are eligible for some sort of defense or protection from deportation, and you have the right to fight your case. If you've been here for more than 10 years and you have U.S. citizen or permanent resident family members, you may be eligible for protection under what's called cancellation of removal. If you are afraid to go back to your home country for any reason, you may be eligible for asylum and similar protections. If you have any questions about any of this, again, please reach out to our office and we can talk to you about what your options may be in this situation. And last, I just wanted to mention that, if you're detained by immigration and you have concerns about your health, if you're having a fever or cough or any symptoms and you're concerned about your illness, you have the right to ask to speak to a nurse or to go to the clinic. So please assert that right. You have the right to at least request to be seen by the clinic, and you should do so if you have that concern. So I'm going to stop there so I can turn it over to Kate, who's going to talk to us some more about some of the new laws coming out for employees and businesses under coronavirus situation.
Awesome. Thank you, Cori, and thank you everyone who's here with us watching today. As Cori mentioned, I'm covering the CARES Act. It's a huge piece of legislation that was passed. It's over 300 pages. It was passed on March 27th, and it contains lots of different relief packages. I do want to just give a little disclaimer that none of us are tax attorneys. We're not experts in tax. We do overlap a lot with tax questions in our practice, but if you have questions related to your specific tax return, we encourage you to talk to your own tax professional, who could be your CPA, or if you have an actual tax attorney, you could talk to that person as well. And we're always happy to give referrals to people. So if you don't have a connection with someone and you need us to help you find a list of trusted referrals, we're happy to help you with that as well. So the CARES Act, it stands for the Corona Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. As I mentioned, it was passed March 27th, and it's a piece of legislation passed by Congress, which then gets interpreted by the various federal agencies that are charged with implementing it. One of them, for example, would be the Small Business Administration. And so they're going to implement their own policies based on regulations. So there's this sort of effect that happens when we have a big piece of legislation like this, where everyone sort of scrambles to implement and translate the law into policy. And we're sort of in the middle of that process. Some people have already gotten their relief and their loans, but some details are still being worked out. And so this is the most recent information that we have as of today, which is the 15th of April. And we'll continue to do webinars in this format. And then, of course, if you aren't already a follower of our Facebook page, please do follow our Facebook page, because we do at least weekly videos and have been doing more than that recently because of all of the changes. So the CARES Act is a $2.2 trillion relief package, and it's meant to provide support to people living in America who are suffering financially as a result of the pandemic, and also to small businesses. So the first point I want to discuss is, what they're calling the Corona checks, or the relief checks. Lots of people have actually already started getting their checks, and these are payments in the form of a tax credit. But what you're seeing right now, those of you who qualify, are just getting money in your accounts. The payment amount is $1,200 for each adult who qualifies, and then $500 for each child who counts as a dependent on your tax return. I think we confirmed after the last webinar that that's children under the age of 16 are considered dependents for purposes of this check amount. So the check amount is based on, or whether one qualifies for the check and how they get it, is based on how you filed your most recent tax return, meaning either your 2018 or your 2019 tax returns. Normally 2019 tax returns would have been due today, but that deadline was extended. But lots of you have already done your 2019 tax returns because you do it back when you get your W-2, and that if that is the case, then your Corona relief check would be based on your 2019 return. And then the way that you get the money is the way that you received your refund, or that you were registered to receive a refund. So if you had a direct deposit already set up with the IRS, that's how you're going to get your coronavirus check. If you received your refund through the mail, that's how you're going to get your check. And so that will obviously delay your check by a couple of months. If you earned more than $75,000 in your 18 or 19 tax return, they're going to reduce the amount of your check. And then if you earn more than $99,000, you don't get a relief check at all. But as I mentioned, this is a credit. This is a tax credit. So this is where it can get a little bit complicated. But the idea is that the federal government is giving us an advance on a tax credit that they're going to give us on our 2020 taxes, which we're going to be filing next year in April. A tax credit is different than a tax deduction. So a tax credit is money straight to us. A tax deduction reduces the amount of our income and therefore reduces the amount of taxes that we will owe on that income. So credit is straight money. But this is an advance on a credit that we are supposedly due in our 2020 taxes, and it's based on our income, it's based on our dependents, and whether we qualify. So some of us might receive the check, and then not qualify for all of it when we ultimately file our 2020 taxes. An example would be if you receive a check based on a child that you have listed as a dependent on your 2019 taxes who isn't a dependent on your 2020 taxes, you're going to owe that $500 back to the IRS, which will be basically deducted, or you'll end up paying it with your tax return that you file in 2020. And the reverse is also true, that if you don't get the relief now that you should qualify for in your 2020 taxes, then you'll get the credit in when you file your 2020 taxes. So I know this is a little convoluted, but essentially a lot of us are receiving payments now based on money that we're actually due in the future. And so that could change in the future. We could either get money that we don't get now, or we could owe money that we do get now. I hope that makes sense. The biggest question that we get from our community and our clients is who qualifies and whether immigrants qualify. And this again is a sort of convoluted tax, statutory issue, but non-resident aliens, or I guess I should say resident aliens, will qualify for this relief check. Essentially what that means is anyone who has a valid Social Security number who was in the United States at least 180 days since 2017. You don't actually have to have work permission to qualify for the tax relief check. You just have to have a valid Social Security number. The big bummer about all of this for our community is that if someone files a tax return jointly and only one of the couple, like a married filing jointly couple, and only one party has a valid Social Security number, but the other spouse has an individual taxpayer identification number or an ITIN, then unfortunately no one's going to be getting this relief check. And this is just the way that Congress passed the law. There was some discussion about whether to change that before it was passed, but it didn't happen. And so that's the way it's being read and interpreted right now. Like I said, these things can change. The policies can sort of shift after these big laws pass. So hopefully that will shift. But for the moment, people who file with one Social Security number spouse and one ITIN spouse jointly are not going to get any relief check for themselves or for the children. One way that you can affect that in the moment is, let's say you filed your 2018 taxes, but you haven't filed your 2019 taxes yet. Well, you can immediately file your 2019 taxes and look into whether you can file separately. We're not tax experts. I can't advise you guys over who can file jointly and separately. One of the key things to keep in mind is that if you are contemplating an immigration case, and in any case for that matter, you need to be honest with the IRS about whether you're married. So, for example, I know you can't do head of household if you are married and living with your spouse. I think you can choose married filing separately, but I recently heard that that's not always the case, so I don't want to give you guys misinformation. But if you file your 2019 taxes now and you somehow file them separately, and that's allowable, then the spouse that has a Social Security number should get the relief check, in the next couple of months. The other alternative is to correct all of this by the time you file your 2020 taxes, and at that point you'll get the relief checks, because remember, this is all just an advance on a credit that you're due when you file your 2020 taxes. This is another reason why I'm talking to the people who are eligible to apply for a work permit but haven't done it yet. That's if you could get a green card through your spouse. That's if you have been a victim of domestic violence and you are eligible for VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act. If you're in removal proceedings and you are applying for cancellation, or you're applying for asylum, there's lots of different ways in the world of immigration that applying for a benefit gives you a work permit while your case is pending. And most of the time, those work permits take about 6 months after you file to get, sometimes less, but usually max 6 months. What that means is we're on April 15th. If some of you are eligible to apply for a benefit that gives you a work permit, you should be doing that right now, because you'll probably get your work permit before the end of 2020. What does that mean? That means that when you and your spouse go to file the 2020 tax return, you're both going to have Social Security numbers. You're both going to be owed, this credit. And so that could mean the difference between, for a family of 4, mom, dad, 2 kids, that's, what is that, $3,400 in actual money that is yours, that you don't have to pay taxes on. So it's a very critical thing to think about. And as always, if you have any questions about whether you could be eligible for a work permit, give us a call, send us a text message. Our number is 512-599-8500. Message us on Facebook. We're here for you. We are really trying to give you guys a lot of information right now without charging you. We're offering free virtual consultations. Our team is working really hard at home for you, and we're available to answer your questions specifically about your cases. One other thing to note about the CARES Act is that if you were married when you filed your 18 or 19 taxes and now you've separated, unfortunately, the money for both of you is going to go to the principal filer on your last tax return. So if you need help working that out with an attorney, that would be a family law attorney or a divorce attorney, and we can give you referrals to those people as well. I think that's it on the relief checks. Let me move on to unemployment because we get a lot of questions about that too. This is another big benefit of the CARES Act. What this part of the act said that that people who traditionally wouldn't have qualified for unemployment now can. That includes self-employed people like gig economy workers, Uber drivers, people who own their own business. You guys can file for unemployment, and that wasn't true in the past. So the mechanism to do that is to file through your state unemployment agency. And the CARES Act provides an additional $600 per week on top of whatever your state benefit is. It's huge. So, and you can file for partial unemployment. So if you've earning less money, you're working fewer hours, but you're still kind of working in your own business, you can file for unemployment and you'll get this additional $600 benefit. It's from January 27th all the way to the end of December. So we're talking about a lot of money here. And I encourage everyone who's eligible to file for this. Unlike the relief checks, you do have to have a valid work permit to qualify for unemployment. So you have to be a citizen or a permanent resident or have valid work permission. One thing to just keep in mind is, when we're talking about self-employed, a lot of it's up to you to report what you're earning. And I just want to remind everyone, anytime you're dealing with a federal agency like the IRS or a state unemployment agency, you always need to be telling the truth and not claiming that you've lost income that you haven't lost, but also just a reminder that it is considered a crime to misreport about your self-employment. And there's comes with fines and potential jail time. So just be very careful about what you're saying and making sure that it's all true. Another big concern in our community is about the public charge rules. We've covered this a lot in a lot of the material that we've put out, but in February, the public charge rules took effect. And essentially what that is that any applicant for a green card, like through a family-based case, now has to prove that in addition to having a sponsor who earns over the poverty guidelines, they also have to prove that they themselves demonstrate self-sufficiency, that they're not going to become a public charge on the government. And so what does that look like? Well, we have to submit this new form with every application that asks about your skills, your education, your language abilities, your debts, your assets, your credit score, if you've developed one, and whether you've ever received any public benefits. And so everyone's afraid of taking public benefits and maybe later not being able to qualify under this new public charge rule. Well, the good news is that the CARES Act relief, unemployment benefits, none of this stuff is counted for purposes of the public charge rules. So what you need to be focusing on for public charges means tested federal public benefits. What does that mean? That means benefits that you receive from the federal government that you only get because you're below a certain income level. So that's like cash assistance, food stamps, Medicaid. Insurance for your children, benefits for your children will not harm your public benefit, your public charge inquiry. So I always say this, and I want to stress it again. If your kids qualify for some sort of benefit that they need, take it. Get the benefit that your kids needs. Just don't misrepresent your income when you apply for the benefit. So if one parent in the home is working but being paid cash under the table, don't try to hide that income so that you can qualify for a benefit that you might not otherwise qualify for. Just tell the truth, be on the up and up, and apply for the benefits that you can get right now. Okay, I've got a little bit of time, so I do want to cover the other parts of the CARES Act that may or may not affect some of the people listening, and I do have a couple of questions that we got via email. The Paycheck Protection Program is a program for business owners who have employees that they're paying. You had to have been in business in 2019, and the PPP is a forgivable loan from the federal government, from the SBA, that pays you, essentially it's 1 month of your average payroll costs in 2019 minus, multiplied by 2.5. And the idea is that then you can use this money for payroll to keep your employees paid, for rent or mortgage payments, and for utilities, and also for health insurance costs. And if you can demonstrate that you used all that money for allowable expenses, the loan is forgivable on the back end. It's been kind of a disaster in the rollout, which I think didn't surprise a lot of people. Lots of banks opened the applications before they had guidance from the SBA. So some banks opened their applications and shut them really quickly, like Chase and Wells Fargo. It seems like the smaller local credit union banks are the ones that are the heroes of the day, that they're the ones who are getting their customers funding right now. So that is another thing. There's also, the money's running out. So if you qualify for any of those benefits, you want to act fast to try and get that money. And I'm pretty sure that you don't have to have a social security number. It's not super clear, but that these benefits are available to people who are not U.S. citizens. I'm not 100% accurate, or not accurate, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And I'll keep doing updates as I learn more information. There's another loan for businesses called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, EIDL or EIDL. And this is a longstanding disaster relief program that gets rolled out when there's a hurricane or a tornado or a flood in a zone where a disaster is declared, where businesses can apply for these low interest loans to cover loss of income in the business. It's available to nonprofits, to LLCs, to independent contractors, to sole proprietors. And so that you apply directly to the SBA, you do not go through a bank, and that if you're eligible, you get a $10,000 grant within 3 days that is forgivable, and it's separate from the loan. So a good rule of thumb is to try and apply for EIDL. If you have a solid business that you know is going to survive this, apply for EIDL. Don't accept a big federal loan if you don't think that your business is going to survive this, but you can apply for a loan to cover expenses that aren't covered in the Paycheck Protection Program. On the last webinar, we had a question about whether someone can do EIDL, the disaster loan, and unemployment. My belief is that you can, because the unemployment is about your own pay that you received, and the EIDL is about the income of your business. But as with the tax questions, I'm not a business attorney, so I don't want to, don't rely on what I'm telling you in this webinar. Find your own advice from a business attorney, and I have lots of contacts that I can share with you guys if you message us. We got a question about whether spouses can get the relief if one of the people doesn't have a social. I think I covered that, but if not, just say something on the chat and let me know if there's outstanding questions there. And then the other question we got was, what about students who are on an F1 visa and their school has gone virtual? It's up to the school to report whether a student is complying with their F1 visa or not. And so if your school is offering online classes and you're complying, I feel pretty sure that you'll be able to continue in your valid student visa. You just need to be enrolled for, I think it's a 12-hour minimum. It probably varies by program, but just, continue your enrollment and your participation in your studies. And if you have any specific questions, always talk to the international office at your school, because they are the ones who report everything. They know the ins and outs. And we, from time to time, get student visa questions, and I always redirect people back to their international student office. I mean, we can do some of that work if you need an attorney, but generally the first place you should call is your international student office. That's it for all my prepared content.
That's great. And we don't have any questions right now. So just to wrap it up, if y'all could each just say a positive comment or something positive that has happened to you during this time, so that we can just help the overall feeling of everything that's going on.
I have two things that I want to, personally for me, I have watched my daughters get a lot closer with each other. They only have each other, and so it's this time together has actually been really good for their relationship. And the other thing is that I've been really impressed by our clients with your flexibility and willingness to go virtual with us. It's just been remarkable the way that people have been, downloading new video conferencing software and meeting with us. And I know this is new to a lot of people. A lot of it's been new to us and our team too. And I just am really impressed by the way that everyone's been willing to do this. And I'm excited that that we've figured this out, because, a lot of our clients are undocumented and shouldn't be driving. And so our ability to reach you in your homes is an exciting thing for me. So those are the two positives for me right now.
Well, I'm just going to jump in very briefly because I have a little visitor, but I think being able to work at home and spend time with my family, here's one of my family members, has been really nice. And so just being able to focus on family when we're usually so busy with work and school events and events with churches and families and organizations and everything, it's been really nice to just, when we're done with work, just be with our family. So that's been really nice to have that time with my kids, even right now.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. I've got two little boys, and they don't really get to see much of each other during the school day. One's at home, and the other one's at school. And so I don't feel like they've gotten tired of each other, even though they've been in the same spaces for months now. It's been really nice. And they haven't gotten tired of me either, which is nice. We've also perfected our flour tortilla recipe that only makes 8 instead of 25, which was our previous recipe. So that's been a big boon of this one. And just kind of more globally, I feel like I've been really impressed, at least here in Austin, at how our communities sort of come together, even though we can't be in the same place. I feel like people are really watching out for their neighbors and donating Lysol and bringing by groceries to people who can't go out. And it's been very heartening to see.
That's great to hear. But yes.
Are you going to share yours, Fidel?
For me, it's mostly just being able to just be here at home. So I also like going outdoors a lot. And just going into nature. And I have found a couple of spots to still be able to do that. So just being in those spots by myself and being able to have that time is really good and really nice. So that's been mostly for me. But thank you so much for joining us, everybody who jumped on board and watched this video. It's really useful information. So the video is going to be available for everybody to share. So feel free to share it with your family members, with your friends. Just get the information out there. And thank you to all of you for giving us this information and taking the time to research everything and providing it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, hope everyone has a great day. It's middle of the week, so almost the weekend.
Bye.
Bye.